Hey, thank you, Ekai. And thank you for that wonderful Qigong practice, Josen. Wow. Okay, so Maha Satipatthana, Satipatthana Sutra. Same thing. Maha is just bigger, it's just got more. so, um, it contains within it what are called the four great frames of reference. So when we're practicing these four great frames, and they're also referred to as the four foundations of mindfulness, the four applications of mindfulness, and there's a few other names as well, but they're all referring to this. So where does this come from? Um, think of now. This can sometimes take a while to sort out. I know I've struggled with it um, for periods of, of time, trying to sort out the name. But just think three baskets: a basket, a basket. Put one on your head. Three baskets. All right. This is called the Tipitaka or Tipitaka. Okay. These three baskets are housed, by the whole of the Pali canon. And so the three baskets are the rules, the Vinaya rules. The basket right here, the second basket is the basket that contains all of the sutras, all of the sutras. And the Abhidharma is the other basket that has basically Buddhist psychology. So rules, discourses, and Buddhist psychology. Okay, so here's the quote. This is the only way, O bhikkhus. Bhikkhus are students or disciples for the purification of being, for the overcoming of sorrow and lamentation, for the destruction of suffering and grief, for reaching the right path, for the attainment of nirvana, namely the four foundations of mindfulness. So we could take just this one quote and spend a very, very long time. In fact, everything about the Satipatthana Sutra links to something else, or one word within the sutra expands into a deep study and deep practice. But I'll just touch on a couple of things here. First of all, this is the only way. Have we heard this before? This is the only way. Well, it's actually a translation issue. So it doesn't necessarily mean the only way in the way that we tend to refer to this way and no other way. So let's just think of it as this is the direct way as opposed to the only way. This is the direct way. And also, when we get to the word nibbana or nirvana, one is Pali, the other is Sanskrit. One belongs more to the Theravadan, and that's nibbana. So you'll hear them say sutta, and you'll hear nibbana, and the other is sutra and nirvana. So we want to remember that we're talking about the mind here. And so nirvana is referring to a quality of our consciousness. And that quality is free from delusion or ignorance. In fact, there is knowing, there is wisdom, free from various forms of hatred, which again takes many, many, many different forms, many we don't even recognize or realize. So we awaken to these things, and greed is the same. We don't recognize many of the forms that greed takes. And so this is what the Buddha is saying. Know this, practice this, understand this deeply. And this is a direct path to the overcoming of suffering. So all of the major practices, I'm going to say all, pretty much most, if not all, they all connect one way or another to this sutra. And the purpose of practicing this particular sutra is to learn to establish a mindful awareness, the ability to be here in the present now with what is arising. So a mindful awareness of the present moment. And our awareness is usually placed in one of these four domains, okay? Or the four frames or domains. And these are body. I'll repeat this numerous times. Body, feeling and sensation, mental constructs. And you'll hear some people say mental objects. I don't. I usually say phenomena or dharmas. Understanding phenomena or dharmas. Okay. So being able to be present in the present moment means just simply continuity of attention. And for those of you who have been coming to Sunday Sit or are familiar with Chuladasa's work, we do a lot of focus on experiencing, what is expanded awareness, what is peripheral awareness, and what is attention. So what is the broad open expanse, and what is the direct focus on a particular object. So sati is talked about in a lot of ways, but let's think of it as presence, mindful awareness in the moment. Now, patana, we've got two words, another word, patana and upatana. Patana is referring to the ground, or what it is we're focusing on, the actual foundation, which is body, feeling, mental states, or dharmas. Okay, so it defines the frame of reference. This is content intense, so do your best to stay with this, because it will really help. It will really help organize your way of understanding, your way of seeing how these connect over time. So not to confuse 4 frames of reference, body, feeling, mental states, phenomena, or dharmas, with what I'm going to explain now, which are the 3 meta stages. Okay, got that? 3 meta stages of the content, the whole content of the Satipatthana, the Maha Satipatthana Sutras. So these are the what, how, and the result. Got it. Good. Okay. So Satipatthana Sutra outlines the practice, right? Satipatthana, same thing, sort of, with a slight difference, outlines how we practice. And it's referring to being present. So how we practice Satipatthana, we practice the Satipatthana with presence. And has everybody heard of insight or vipassana? Well, the result, 1, 2, 3, what, how, result is insight. Insight eventually leads to skillful means and to deep wisdom and awakening. Right. Okay. So that basically was the what. Everything that I've just said is the what. So that's the first stage. The second stage is the how. How are we going to do this? Okay. We're going to focus directly on the phenomena of the arising of something taking place, the passing away of the thing that had arose, whether thought or emotion or feeling. Within the particular frame of reference that we're working with. Okay, so they talk about focus directly, and they talk about focus indirectly. So that's directly on the phenomena, right, itself, its arising, its duration, its passing, and indirectly refer to the other of the 3 frames in relationship to it. So in other words, directly might be on something related to body. Indirectly, of course, we're aware that there might be a feeling somewhere arising. There might be a narrative about that feeling that's arising, and so on. So clearly we focus directly, and we're also aware of what is indirectly arising. Ardent is a word that is used, and it refers to really applying effort to what these instructions are. Now, being able to follow instructions are actually one of the powers. We never think, when we think of powers, we're thinking of walking on water. No, being able to do the prior instructions is actually a power. And it's not easily attained. It's not easily attained. So, ardent refers to the effort, knowing what is skillful, knowing what is not skillful, and choosing appropriately, right? Alert is awake. not sleeping, not in a dull state, but being awake to what is taking place. And mindful in the context of this teaching is keeping the frame of reference in mind. What is the object that we have chosen to work with? Keep that in mind. We lose it, we return. We know these instructions. We've been doing it for years. But are you adept? We want to be adept. We want to be masterful. So that's the second stage. That's the how we do it. How we do it, right? And the third stage is the insight that arises. So in the third stage, we start to recognize that the more enmeshed or the more identified with arising and passing of something, so that we even kind of don't know that some object has caught our attention. So the more identified we are and the more entangled we are with the narrative or whatever the object of attention is, the more struggle there is, the more suffering there is long term. So we identify with the pain, our mind moves on with that and doesn't like the pain, strikes up a narrative. We shoot ourselves with a second arrow, third arrow, and there is the suffering. There is the suffering. And this ends when we're truly able to recognize, be present with, and be able to mark, to be able to see this process in present time while it's in action. And the result is shunyata. The result is calm abiding, recognizing the unformed nature of everything that is coming and going, which basically is a depth understanding of arising and passing and non-fabrication. So these are all words that are very sort of traditional, and we can interpret and use more or less Western language, but I think it's important that we sort of understand, the author, so to speak, a little bit more, that person, those people who have authored and translated in this way, and then we can run with it, right? So those are the three stages: the what, the how, and the result of practicing the four foundations or applications, or the four frames of reference. So let me give you an example, if I can recall it. How did it go? We did a half-hour meditation this morning. And so I was focusing on the body. And you cannot focus on the body without becoming aware of breathing. You cannot focus on breathing without being in body. So I was aware of body. And then it happened that I noticed the sensation or feeling. Let's call it sensation and feeling. So I call these primary feelings. And the feeling, the sensation, was an itchiness. And so I checked in whether I was aversive to it or not aversive to it. And no, I wasn't aversive to it. But then I had a whole bunch of other itchiness sensations come up. And I had to check in very quickly with some of those. And then just, this is how it goes. Body, sensation, feeling, mental object. I made a narrative. Okay, I had a narrative, a one sentence narrative. And that's where it's like, chop. That's where the sword comes down. That's where the no in our Zen comes in. No, right? To stop the papancha, to stop the proliferation of narration that goes on and on and on and on without our actual intention, you know, unless it's something we want to do or need to do, you know, taking the leash off the dog, go run, yeah, right? And so I was aware, although I wasn't thinking it, when it came to Dharma or phenomena, I recognized that all of the phenomena that had just taken place was a part of the teachings, the Dharma. In other words, I caught the moment where the feeling moved into a mental object, how one affected the other. And that's our practice. That's what we have to get really good at. And it's one thing on the cushion. It's another thing when we're in discussion. It's another thing when we're emotionally activated and captured by some feeling. Right? This is why awakening, we can have a spiritual experience. We can have amazing spiritual experiences, deep insight. You know, so we can awaken. We can say yes, you know, had a moment of enlightenment. It all became clear. But are we liberated on a day-to-day basis? Are we actually liberated? You see. So let's get clear about that. Again, we can have spiritual awakenings, but the actual liberation is thought by thought, reaction by reaction, idiocy after idiocy. Right? Yeah. So the first one is focus on the body, which we're not going to spend any time actually exploring, but we need to understand these instructions. Focus on the body in and of itself is the instruction. Focus on the body in and of itself. So we go to an appropriate setting, a safe, quiet place, ideally with fresh air. Take a good posture, bring attention, you know, initially to just outside of the body, peripheral awareness, however it is you do it, at the belly or at the nostrils. I start with the belly so that we can open up this body, and then we do the central channel breathing, right? So the body in and of itself means just focus on the body. Don't focus on the feeling. You might know that there's the feeling, you might know that there's a mental object, you might know the Dharma, but we're focusing on the body in and of itself. And the body has a very long list of practices, very long list of practices, really amazing practices. And now hear this, because this is where everybody gets confused. Our first foundation is the body, And the first practice within the Satipatthana body is breathing. And the breathing practice is anapanasati. Okay? So when it's said that Satipatthana and anapanasati are inseparable, they are inseparable. Okay. And yet we try to, for the sake of communication. So understand, when we're talking mindfulness of breathing anapanasati, we're talking about the Satipatthana, first foundation, body. And the body breathes. Right? Okay. Okay, so everything after this takes us into body. And back to definitions a bit, you'll hear the word kaya or kaya, K-A-Y-A. Kaya means body. And so there are a number of different bodies, and one of the bodies that we study is anapanasati, the body of breathing. Okay. And finally, I don't know if I can find it here. Here's an interesting thing. Satipatthana Sutra. We've got two major versions. Theravada is one, and there is so that's Theravada. Well, that's another story, but basically Theravada is the group, the teaching, the sect that survived. Their teaching survived. There were many such groups, but these folks survived their teaching. Their teaching survived them. And the other is the Chinese version, and this is called the Sarvastivadin version. I can't pronounce it properly. So that's how this connects into Zen teaching way, way, way back, aside from the Yogacharans as well. So there is a Chinese version that goes through the same thing, body postures, clear comprehension. They talk about cutting off thought, suppressing thought, and we can talk about not cutting off. We can use different language, and it goes on. And then it talks about the dhyanas, first dhyana, second dhyana, third dhyana, fourth dhyana. And really what it's talking about right there is the practice of anapanasati and how to enter samadhi. Whole other body of teaching. So you see, it all connects. Okay, and that's all I'm going to say for now. Thank you.